The courtroom felt colder than any place Emily Carter had ever been, and she had spent years teaching in drafty Sunday school basements during winter. Yet nothing compared to this. The air carried a stillness that pressed against her chest, as if even breathing too loudly might shatter something fragile and irreversible. She sat quietly at the defense table, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned pale. The soft murmur of voices around her blurred into a distant hum. Reporters whispered. Spectators leaned forward in their seats. Somewhere, a pen tapped rhythmically against a notepad. Life continued in small, ordinary ways, yet hers had already begun to collapse. Emily had always been known as kind, gentle, the type of person who stayed late after class to help children memorize their lessons, who baked cookies for every holiday, who remembered birthdays no one else cared about. Parents trusted her without hesitation. Children adored her. And now, those same eyes filled the courtroom, except they no longer held trust. Only confusion, fear, doubt. She lifted her gaze slowly toward the jury. 12 strangers who had spent days listening to a story that didn't sound like her life. A story that had twisted her existence into something dark, something unrecognizable. She searched their faces for any sign of understanding, any flicker that someone believed she wasn't what the prosecution claimed. But she found none. Her attorney leaned closer, whispering something about staying calm, about the judge entering soon. Emily nodded faintly, though she hadn't heard a word. Her thoughts drifted instead, pulling her backward through time. It hadn't started like this. Just months ago, her life had been simple, predictable, peaceful. Every Sunday, she stood in front of a small group of children, her voice warm and steady as she told them stories about kindness, forgiveness, and doing what was right even when it was hard. She believed every word she taught. It wasn't just a lesson, it was who she was. Or at least, who she thought she was. The memory shifted. A rainy afternoon. The classroom nearly empty. Only one child remained behind, sitting quietly at the corner desk. Daniel Harper. 9 years old. Quiet, withdrawn, often overlooked by the others. Emily had always felt a special concern for him. She remembered kneeling beside him, speaking softly. "Is everything okay, Daniel?" He had hesitated, then shook his head. That moment changed everything. The courtroom door opened, snapping Emily back to the present. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Emily stood as well, her legs unsteady beneath her. The room fell into silence. "Be seated." She lowered herself back into her chair, her heart pounding now, each beat louder than the last. The judge began speaking, outlining the final stage of the trial. Words like verdict and sentencing drifted through the air, heavy and unavoidable. Emily tried to focus, but her mind kept fracturing, slipping between past and present. Daniel's voice echoed in her memory. He said not to tell anyone. Emily had felt her chest tighten that day. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. She had reported it, of course. Immediately. It was what any responsible adult would do. What any teacher was required to do. But things hadn't unfolded the way they were supposed to. Instead of clarity, there had been confusion. Instead of protection, there had been accusations. Small inconsistencies in Daniel's story had grown into larger questions. Questions that eventually pointed, not outward, but toward her. At first, it seemed impossible. Laughable. Even. Emily Carter. The Sunday school teacher. The one who organized charity drives and spent her own money on supplies for the kids. But doubt spreads quickly, especially when fueled by fear. The investigation had been relentless. Interviews. Repeated questioning. Her words examined, re-examined, and then twisted into something else entirely. Every action she had taken, every moment she had tried to help, was now being presented as something sinister. The prosecution had built their case piece by piece, turning coincidence into intent, concern into suspicion. And now, here she was. The jury foreperson stood. Emily's breath caught in her throat. On the charge of first-degree murder. The words hung in the air like a storm about to break. Emily felt the world narrow around her. The courtroom, the people, the sound, it all faded until there was nothing but that single moment. We find the defendant. Her fingers trembled uncontrollably now. She tried to steady them, but it was no use. Guilty. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Emily didn't move. She couldn't. The word echoed in her mind again and again, refusing to settle, refusing to make sense. Guilty. Her attorney immediately stood, speaking rapidly about appeals, about next steps, but Emily barely registered it. The judge continued, his voice firm, authoritative. Given the severity of the crime and the circumstances surrounding it, Emily's gaze drifted again, unfocused. Across the room, she spotted Daniel's mother. Tears streamed down the woman's face, her expression a mixture of grief and anger. That look alone felt heavier than any sentence. This court sentences you to death. The words struck harder than anything before. Death. For a brief moment, everything inside Emily went completely still. No fear. No panic. Just a hollow emptiness that swallowed everything else. Then, slowly, reality began to seep back in. The guards approached her. Her attorney was still talking, his voice urgent now, but distant. Emily stood as instructed, her legs barely supporting her. As the cold metal of handcuffs closed around her wrists, she felt a sharp clarity cut through the fog. This was real. This was happening. She turned her head one last time, scanning the room. Faces blurred together. Some looked satisfied, others disturbed. A few avoided her gaze entirely. No one saw her anymore. Not as Emily Carter. Not as the teacher. Not as the person she had been. Only as the woman who had been sentenced to die. As she was led toward the exit, her mind returned once more to that rainy afternoon. Daniel sitting alone. His quiet voice. He said not to tell anyone. Emily had believed she was doing the right thing. She had trusted that truth would protect her. That truth would matter. But somewhere along the way, the truth had been buried beneath assumptions, fear, and the need for someone to blame. And now, she was the one paying the price. The heavy doors of the courtroom opened, and a flash of cameras exploded in front of her. Questions were shouted, voices overlapping in a chaotic storm. Do you have anything to say? Did you do it? Are you sorry? Emily paused for just a fraction of a second. For the first time since the verdict, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but steady. I told the truth. Then she was moved forward again, swallowed by the noise, disappearing into a future she could no longer escape.